the question is always, isn't it, how do we connect what we do, our thinking, with young people who are going to make a difference, young people who are vulnerable to being trafficked themselves, to being bought and sold, young people who can, if their awareness grows, watch out for others, young people who can become peer mentors, young people who can take care of someone else more vulnerable than themselves. And so that was my task. And a number of initiatives therefore have grown up in a joint way between UN.GIFT and Stop the Traffic, and Start Freedom is the latest. So
I'm a member of the Suzanne Mubarak's Women's International Peace Movement, and I'm also part of the End Human Trafficking Now campaign of the movement. I'm also a member of the Youth Division and Youth Network of the movement itself. Fortunately, I was chosen to represent the campaign here to you. But not only am I here to represent the campaign, I'm also here to represent and show you the power of Youth for Peace. And when I talk about power of Youth for Peace, I do not mean, by the word peace, I do not mean absence of war. I mean inner peace, the feeling of being safe, safety, the feeling to be safe in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our streets, in our communities. It is a reality that today there is always the imminent danger for all of us to be attacked, kidnapped, and trafficked. This is what human trafficking is about. People taken against their will or even tricked and sold, yes, sold, and sometimes resold to others who abuse them, sometimes for domestic work, sex work, sweatshops. There are many more examples I can say. So what can we do about it, us youth? We can do a lot. First of us, it is for us to inform our own parents, our families and friends. Awareness is the key, and we have to stop ignorance and denial. Because the first reaction is to say, it is not happening here around us, it's not happening in our societies, but in faraway communities. It doesn't concern us. But it is happening in all societies. It is taking different forms and is happening right now in front of our own eyes.
UNODC is the guardian of the UN protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, that went into effect in 2003. And since that protocol or treaty went into effect, 133 of the UN member states have signed on to it. So we have about 2/3 since it was negotiated in 2000, which is a very good rate. The challenge now is not getting the last third to ratify it, but getting the 2/3 who have already ratified it to implement it. And if you look at Article 9 of the protocol, it talks about the power of NGOs and the media in prevention efforts. And it asks UN member states and UN organizations to use the power of the media and of those on the ground, like Stephen, Ruth, and Taha, to spread the message. As Jeremy Bentham said, the legal philosopher, publicity is the very soul of justice. And as the leader in global justice, UNODC, is very lucky to have such strong partners here to help us spread the word. So many of you know that human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business involving millions and millions of persons. Why do I use the word multi-billion and multi-million when I talk about human trafficking, yet when I come and speak to all of you on June 26th, which is the International Day Against Narcotics Trafficking and Drug Abuse, I give you precise figures? And that's because there hasn't been the prioritization of this human trafficking problem in the same way there has been of the drug problem. And so when we talk about human trafficking, we always talk about the 3 Ps: prevention, protection, and prosecution. And it's long time that we add a 4th P, which is prioritization of this problem. So this effort not only seeks to protect victims and engage all types of stakeholders, particularly the youth, in spreading the message, but it also seeks to prioritize what has been, until very recently, a very neglected crime. And right now, human trafficking, look at what the penalties are. I said that only 40% of the countries covered by our global report reported that they've had at least 1 conviction. So there isn't really a disincentive to would-be traffickers to traffic in people. And it's a little bit harder to detect somebody being trafficked than detect, you can have a dog sniff drugs at a border, but the way that people are put into modern-day slavery, the fear that they have, it's a little difficult to detect it. But if we train law enforcement, if we train NGOs, if we train social service agencies, we can do a lot better. And one other thing I'd just like to point out, if you look at the UN Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, that same article that I mentioned about prevention, what is the best way to prevent human trafficking? Well, Nicholas Kristof, the New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, just came out with a book that UNODC had an event here last month discussing that book. And in there he says that the best way to prevent trafficking is not after the fact, but to educate girls.
Trafficking is a crime that shames us all, as UN.GIFT say, and it can only exist because of people's greed and the compliance of legal systems that refuse, perhaps there's political inactivity for all sorts of reasons, but we become willing to live with this crime. We believe, as Stop the Traffic, UN.GIFT, that young people have a huge role to play in putting an end to all this, because they do have the energy and they do have the courage to stand up and ask the obvious question, which so many other people ignore.